live from my apartment. It's Rob Has a Podcast, and now here's a man who's more festive this weekend than Christmas Corey. Rob Cesternino. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Sunday night, Week 2, Big Brother 18 recap as we go along here. Happy 4th of July weekend to those of you guys here in the U.S. celebrating. And let's bring in our man who stepped away from a big barbecue at his house, the great Taran Armstrong. Taran, how are you?
Awful. Rob, I'm still devastated from the loss of the Messiah. Just like Victor, I'm so upset.
He's coming back. He'll be back. Trust me. Please believe. Yes. The Messiah will
right now, Rob. Every moment he's not there is a moment wasted.
Yeah, so very excited as we continue the march back to the big Boogie Down battle back coming up later on this summer. But I was thinking about this, that we have the big RHAP coming up this next weekend in Chicago. Really, how fun would it have been if the battle back was 1 week earlier? We could have had a whole big Friday night battle back viewing party.
Yeah, that would have been fantastic. But yeah, unfortunately they don't schedule around the RHAP.
No, they did not. But we will be live that night to break down everything from the big battle back coming up a week from Friday. But tonight we've got some fun stuff to talk about here on a little bit of a sleepy Sunday night on Big Brother 18, but some fun from the live feeds as well to go through, as it was a night where it was Victor really sort of having to deal with losing his ally Jose, and then Paulie, the new HOH, making plans to eventually, hopefully in his mind and for most of the house, to send Victor packing this Thursday. But we'll talk through that, talk through the roadkill intrigue with Victor getting it, the nominations, and much more here on a Sunday night on Rob Has a Podcast. Hashtag RHAP to get your questions in the show later on, and then also on our YouTube channel at robhasawebsite.com/YouTube. Also, Taran, first off, let's just, before we get into the episode, send out big congratulations to our good friend Dan Giesling and Chelsea Giesling on the birth of baby boy #1, Desmond brother.
Yes, so happy for them. They're going to be great parents, and they're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
I think that it's gonna be a fun to watch them with the baby, and congratulations to Dan and Chelsea on that baby boy over the weekend. All right, so let's get into this, where we got to see the fallout from the HOH competition, where Paulie becomes the new HOH. Taran, I really felt like this competition, we saw the beginning of it on Thursday night, but I really felt like that, I don't know if this was either exactly what they wanted or not what they wanted in terms of the production, but this was a very, very easy challenge to throw. And not just that, it was also one where a thrower could really completely subvert the whole efforts of the team by taking away up to 9 berries, as we saw with James at the point where he fell out. That to lose the whole column, it really made it so easy for the vets to manipulate this.
Yeah, if they're going to continue with these kinds of competitions where you really rely on every single member of the team as an essential part of the competition, then we're going to continue to see this sort of thing where they're able to prevent people from ever winning HOH just by throwing these competitions. As far as whether or not they want this to happen, I can't imagine that this is what they want it to happen. I think they. I'm not somebody that subscribes to the belief that they're doing this to rig it in anybody's favor in particular. I think that they thought that it might make for a fun thing, and unfortunately maybe either didn't think it all the way through or just had some unforeseen consequences occur, but this is just not the best way to spread out the power.
I mean, I understand the game, and you have to go across the logs to get the berries, but the idea of the penalty where the person who goes off at any given point could lose up to 9 points for their team all week long. The house guests were talking about, okay, I'm going to throw the HOH, I'm not going to go for the HOH. You have to feel like that it was either very poor game design to have that structure in the game, or it was exactly what they wanted to have to happen. What do you really feel like that they didn't see this coming?
I think that Okay, so when I say I don't think that they necessarily set it up to aid particular people, I mean that. I don't think that they're necessarily looking for it to just benefit the vets. I think that they're looking for it to benefit a majority alliance. I think that we've been going toward that direction ever since season 15 with the MVP twist. I think that they are looking to create big majority alliances that will steamroll the house in the first half of the game. That's what we've seen in all of these seasons, and I think it's something that they like. I think that they like having a main cast and then a B cast that just kind of goes away.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not really understanding necessarily. Like, I get like they say, okay, well, the vets, these are our stars. We want to try to help them out. But just the idea of we like majorities over the minority group of house guests who are on the outs, because I feel like that's usually where most of your action comes from. But maybe they feel like just getting these people on the ropes, these combustible elements, leads to better drama in the first couple of weeks of the show.
Yeah, and I really would. I would say that they're doing this just to benefit the vets, but this is something that happened last season with the Battle of the Block, and the season before that, and the season before that. So, like, every single one of these seasons, there was a twist that benefited majorities, and so I think that's more of a through line than just something that's going to benefit the vets. Obviously, this does benefit the vets, and I think that the teams probably were something that were put together to benefit the vets, and so this, sequentially then does also help the vets. So it's definitely something that I think was in their minds, but I think really the only thing that we've seen as a constant since season 15 is we like these majorities. We're going to give them twists that help them in the game.
Okay, try to keep the little guys down in the Big Brother house. Yeah,
at least in the first half.
So, with that in mind, so Paulie becomes the new HOH, as we talked through on Thursday night with Johnny Mac. And so we got to see, it really seems like such a Big Brother trope that the person who's nominated the first week and survives becomes the week 2 HOH. I feel like that this has happened, got to be close to half the seasons.
Yeah, it probably is. I can think of
probably like 30%.
Yeah, I can think of like 3 or 4 off the top of my head. So, yeah, definitely. I think part of it is that people who are part of the house that just voted to save this person want this person to become HOH, which was definitely the case this time, where we saw a lot of people think, okay, well, we just voted to keep Paulie in the house. Now we want to give him power so he can go after the people that just voted against him. And that's a part of it. And I also think, they just came off the block. They're looking for safety. They're going to try a little bit harder than everyone else.
Okay, so in terms of throwing the HOH to Paulie from the don't ask me the team names. For Frank to throw it to Paulie, do you feel like that was a smart move on Paulie's behalf?
On Paulie's behalf or Frank's behalf?
Frank's behalf.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what Frank is doing is kind of textbook, right? Like he's part of a majority alliance. He's part of a sub alliance within that majority alliance, and then he has another sub alliance, and he has another sub alliance outside of the alliance with people like Bridget. And so he's keeping all of these people, in his back pocket, and he's making sure that other people take the heat. Getting HOHs, going after people while he sits in the background. The problem with Frank is this going to be too obvious? He is still Frank, and he did still win that roadkill competition last week. So whether or not this is going to succeed, we'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more as we go along here, just like how long is this plan going to be able to work for Frank. It's funny, just going back to the team name idea, just the fact that there are teams and team names is a fact that sort of gets lost on me the whole week. And then to have an HOH competition, and we're talking about Team Unicorn, Category 4, like these are not words you hear the rest of the week.
Yeah, exactly. They're completely irrelevant to the game structure, apart from people being safe because their teammate won HOH.
Right. Who's on my group that's trying to throw the HOH challenge so I can be nominated for the week? That's really what the teams come down to.
Yeah.
All right, so Paulie becomes the HOH, and we got to see a little bit of Paul and Victor trying to strike a deal with Paulie. Really, nobody is particularly good at cutting deals so far in the house, where we see Paul and Victor try to say to Paulie, like, hey, let's do something together. Then, hey, we won't put you up on the block when we become HOH. Otherwise, eventually, we're gonna be HOH and we're gonna come for you. You don't have to keep us off the block if you don't want to, but really, nobody really offering anything substantial to anybody.
Yeah, these poor people. They are so clueless about how the game works. They went into the season with no knowledge whatsoever, and they're against these veterans and these siblings of veterans who know what they're doing, which is vastly like a vast difference in knowledge. And so they're learning on the fly. They just had their first blindside. They're just thinking, oh, now we have to make deals. We have to be nice to people. What is this? This is the game of Big Brother, and they just got introduced to it, unfortunately.
Taran, I want to get your impression of Paul in terms of whether or not you think that he could be as bad as the rest of his alliance. We've certainly seen some good and some bad from him over these first 2 weeks of the game. We saw him tonight where after Paulie had talked to him about, hey, we want you to be the pawn, where Paul and Victor gets pulled aside and Victor says, hey, I think they're trying to backdoor me. And Paul is like, wait, what's a backdoor? Do you feel like that he says he's playing dumb? Do you buy into that? I saw a lot of people sort of incredulous on Twitter about how does Paul not know what a backdoor is? Do you feel like is he playing up how little he knows, or do you think that what you see is what you get?
Well, the funny thing is, I do believe that Paul had to ask Paulie what a backdoor was, and I think Paulie explained to Paul what a backdoor was, and then he played dumb to Victor afterward. I think that's how the events went. So there's both aspects. He's learning on the fly, and then he's immediately putting it into action, much sooner than people like Victor are. Victor was much slower to the draw. He was still complaining about Jose's eviction after Jose was evicted, whereas Paul had pretty quickly gone into the mode of like, okay, I need to start kissing butt here. I need to be a kisser butter. I need to start talking about how Jose was bad and I'm totally with you guys. And so Paul really beat him to that. And Paul's a little more likable in the house socially anyway. So another thing I think Paul has going for him is that he went into the game wanting to play it, wanting to be devious, which makes him a little more likely to pick up on how the game works. Unfortunately, as he learns more and more, that deviousness might be his downfall, but it is benefiting him in the short term.
Is it bad that I like Paul?
I don't think so. I think he's
Am I allowed
fun.
to like Paul or no?
I think you are. I'm pretty sure Andy likes Paul, so I think if Andy likes Paul, anyone can like Paul.
Okay,
that's how it works.
Are there? Does that help the case or hurt the case if Andy likes Paul?
It helps the case for the people that matter, Rob.
Okay. Yeah. No, I do like him. I think that he has said some regrettable things along the way. I wonder if he doesn't just say things for the sake of trying to make good television or feeds, or if he is maybe just a little bit too all over the place. But I have to say, I think that he has a lot of charisma, and I've enjoyed what he's brought to the show so far.
Yeah, Paul reminds me a lot of Zach Rance from Big Brother 16 in the sense that he's very kind of youthful and energetic and naive in some ways, but also devious in other ways. And just he's so genuine in his emotions and just the way that he talks about the game. He's just so crazy, and there was a reason that people liked Zach Rance in the beginning, right? Like, hopefully Paul goes down a different road than Zach did, but he's reminding me a lot of that energy.
Yeah, I think that there is something to that in terms of him, and then I mentioned a couple of weeks ago Dominic back in season 13, where I think that you have like this sort of charismatic wild card, and Zach I think is probably another one of these, where somebody who is kind of a live wire, who people in the house, they like him as a person maybe, but don't feel like they can trust him, and they want to try to talk themselves into that they can trust him. And then eventually they realize, oh no, we can't. We got to get. He has to go. Do you feel that same sort of like? Imagine the scenario where, okay, Victor goes home on Thursday, and then maybe the house sort of talks themselves into like, well, is he really that big of a threat? Who does he have? Okay, maybe we can sort of work with him, and then eventually realizing, no, we can't. He has to go.
Absolutely. That's completely how I see his storyline playing out. And I think that's again because of sort of his enthusiasm and his deviousness. I think that eventually people will be like, we like Paul a lot, but is he actually like is he playing the game? Is he too unreliable? Maybe we can't rely on him as a number. We need to cut him while we have a chance. Something like that. But again, hopefully he's more on the Dom side than the Zach side as far as trajectory goes.
Okay.
Maybe he could find a Danny himself.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. So, anyway, let's get into some of the other players that we saw that have be affected from this fallout. Obviously, Paul and Bronte become the nominees. We saw a lot of Bronte saying, you know what, that's it. I'm done with working with the guys. I got to distance myself. I got to go under the radar. What do you think of this plan for Bronte?
Well, my immediate thought was like, yes, like this is what you should have been doing in the first place. She was like, now I have to be nice to people. I have to, keep my mouth shut a little more. I was like, yeah, this is what you should have been doing the whole last week when you thought you were safe and in the majority, and you were kind of, being a little rude to some people that you thought it didn't matter about. And so, yeah, this is how she should be doing, and I think she is still kind of a target. There's a reason she's on the block. She's seen as expendable to these 8-pack people, but I think that she has improved her stature in the house because of this new behavior.
For the Paulie plan, in terms of, okay, we're going to put Bronte and Paul up on the block to potentially backdoor Victor. Did you like that plan for the 8-pack?
Yeah, people can say that they think the back door might be a little too complicated, but statistically this is the better way of going about things. There are enough players that it's less likely that Victor will get picked in the power veto, that it's actually more likely that he goes home with a back door, and it does help him because this new rapport he has with Paul, right? Like, he is putting Paul up on the block, which is never a good thing, but he's working with him. He's establishing some sort of communication as opposed to putting him up as like a secondary target, right? Mm-hmm. So this is in some ways in building a relationship with those other people and getting some trust with them, because this is a plan that's going to go through without a hitch, and it's also getting him trust with the 8-pack, the majority alliance, because he's putting a plan in motion. He's doing some work for them. He's very solid, kept to his word. Everything goes smoothly. It's win-win.
Right, it's a good test for Paul if he can sort of like keep it cool, keep things together for the whole week. Then maybe that side of the house feels like that they can trust him a little bit moving forward. But interesting now, so we have the roadkill come into play this week, and you have the backdoor target in Victor winning the roadkill, which really brought at least some intrigue to the table. And when I heard over the weekend that Victor won the roadkill competition, in my head I imagined, wow, Victor must have just gone beast mode on the competition, and I thought it had to have been some sort of physical feat that Victor completed. I was blown away at the idea that it was some sort of math competition that Victor won.
Yo, he has a finance degree, bro. Come on.
Yeah, who knew?
Yeah, he beat out Bronte the mathematician and Tiffany the math teacher. So yeah.
Well, Bronte has a well-established track record of she can't do math in her head. She needs like a pad and paper to be able to do it.
Maybe a calculator.
Hashtag 89. So there's Victor now, the winner of the roadkill competition, and he has an interesting decision to make in terms of who could he put up on the block. He is at least suspicious potentially that he could be a backdoor target. So he decides to go with Tiffany. I didn't feel like the episode really explored why Tiffany was the choice for him.
Yeah, and to be fair to the show, there wasn't much reasoning behind it. The official line was that he wanted to nominate James, but he figured James would be too obvious, and he didn't want anyone to know that he was the roadkill, despite the fact that everyone knew he was the roadkill. Yeah. And so he nominated Tiffany instead because he thought that would be less obvious, and he thought that there was a chance that because nobody liked Tiffany that she would get voted out.
Okay, I guess so. Well,
which was
it's
like wrong in all directions, right?
yeah, on the one hand, you think it might be a smart decision to put Tiffany up because if you know the Rousseau sisters and how they might react to unexpected news, you feel like, okay, this could be a good play because you have to feel like, based on Vanessa, and again, that I doubt Victor was home studying the BB17 tapes before he came out, but we know how Vanessa would react to that. And we'll discuss what Tiffany's reaction was when we get to the live feeds. But you feel like this would be a smart play if he didn't go and tell the whole side of the house.
Yeah, like he told everybody, who then immediately told everybody else, and I mean, it's not like he even thought that much through it. Like he not only does he not probably know who Vanessa is, he still doesn't know that Tiffany is Vanessa's sister. So like he's very much in the dark. He's throwing darts at the wall, and the target's behind him. You can't help but feel bad for the poor guy crying in the diary room.
Oh, well, we'll see. Poor Victor. Anything else in regard? Oh, actually, no. This is a good point that I wanted to discuss. Okay, in terms of how he handled the roadkill, in terms of who he put up on the block with this potential backdoor plan in the works. So I happened to talk to Ian Terry over the weekend, and Ian had talked about. And I had seen this in a couple other places, but I will give Ian the credit for this. This is the first place that I had heard about this idea. Ian said the move for Victor was obvious with the BB roadkill. The only way to prevent his own backdoor on Thursday was for Victor to nominate himself with the roadkill, because then he would ensure that he would be able to play in the power of veto competition, which, had he won a power of veto, would eventually be able to save him from a potential backdoor. Taran, what do you think of this idea?
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly what he should have done had he had any awareness of the house dynamics. He unfortunately trusted Paulie. He didn't think that he was going to be backdoored. He even has Paul basically telling him, listen, don't tell anybody you have this power. You should use this strategically. They're playing you. And he still doesn't listen, even though he just got played the week prior. And really, he doesn't even need to put himself on the block, even though that's probably the best decision. He just needs to put somebody up who's definitely going to try and win it, because it's basically the same thing. And so if he puts up somebody who's trying to win it, unlike somebody like James or Tiffany, who are part of the majority alliance, then they're going to win the veto, pull themselves off, and he gets to name the replacement. So he's safe that way as well. So if he puts up somebody like, say, Natalie, which, you know, the problem is he doesn't really have anybody who's going to be able to have a lot of equity in the competition, but, you know, that's still better than somebody like Tiffany, who's just going to throw it and never going to get voted out in the first place. So, you know, nominate one of his allies, keeping himself as the roadkill secret, or put himself up on the block, and then he has a shot in the veto. Unfortunately, he doesn't think that much through the decision.
Yeah, and also it's sort of twofold, where he can put himself up on the block, and then if nobody is going to maybe suspect that he's putting himself up on the block if he doesn't tell anybody, and he could be like really mad about like, who put me up on the block? Who did this to me? And then in this best case scenario where he runs the table and then wins the veto competition, then he could put up somebody like Frank, and then it's like, oh my God, who is this lunatic in the house that's putting up Victor? And then Frank, it must be one of the women. We got to go after the women's side of the house, and really could have created a whole different scenario for the whole rest of the season.
Yeah. If only we had some bigger minds.
Fan fiction. Yeah. So much fun, the fan fiction. And now, Taran, within the rules of the BB roadkill, do you feel like that this is something that actually could be done? Do we know for a fact that a person would be able to nominate themselves?
Well, we don't know for a fact. For all we know, he could have gone into the diary room and said, you know, hey, I want to nominate myself. And maybe he would have been asked, are you sure?
Are you sure? Sure you want to do this?
Oh, man, I don't know. And then maybe it would have been against the rules. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to. You never know.
Yeah, we know that an HOH can't put themselves on the block. This we're pretty sure about, but the roadkill we don't know for sure. We have not gotten an official ruling on this.
Yeah, I do imagine that you would be able to because roadkill doesn't ensure your own safety, so it wouldn't be a contradiction in that sense in the way that an HOH nominating themselves would. So I do think that they probably would be able to, but we don't know for sure yet.
Yeah, I think that would be a very fun thing. Hopefully, we do get the answer to that because we sort of a little poo-pooing of the roadkill twist after week one about how we kind of didn't expect it to create any fireworks, but at least this week we had a situation where it could have potentially, if it was used in a certain way, created some excitement. So maybe the roadkill brings something to the table along the way. And then, obviously, the intrigue being here is that if Tiffany was to have some sort of a freak out a la Vanessa where she gets very panicky about that and does use the power of veto, then we would see Victor potentially with the ability not only to keep himself off the block because he would be the person who would pick the replacement nominee, but also maybe the option to be able to put somebody up on the block that might be a little more appetizing for the rest of the house to go after. But we'll have to see how that plays out on Wednesday. All right, a couple other things from the episode tonight. We got a package about James has a thing for many of the women in the house.
Yeah, this was a complete surprise to me. I never knew that James was such a ladies' man.
Yeah, but I will have to say, we have talked about the idea of hashtag Pervy James for 2 seasons now. But at least so far this season, it seems as though all of the receptivity to James has been pretty positive. That you haven't seen, at least on the show, any of the women saying, "Boy, James is really creeping me out."
He's just so lovable. He's got all those pranks. What girl would be creeped out by sweet old James? And surprisingly, Natalie's into it. Natalie likes James a lot. So kudos to James, I guess.
Seems receptive to it. So
the receptivity is off the charts.
So far, so good with James. Now, hypothetically speaking, though, if Natalie is going to, if depending on where it would go, and let's say best case scenario for James. Okay, so Natalie is into James. Don't you feel like that he would, submarine his game at any cost, just for don't you feel like that the relationship with Natalie or the chance of the relationship with Natalie would immediately move to the top of the priority list for James?
Probably, but she'd need to make sure she did it in the right way because I think James is in a weird way similar to Caleb in this thing where he has this very intense sense of loyalty to his alliance to the extent that when people were telling him you might be nominated for the roadkill, he was like, well, I'm just going to throw the competition immediately. I don't even care. I'll use it on somebody else. He's immensely loyal to his alliance, so he wouldn't necessarily want to just turn their back on them. He might be the kind of person that says, I need to sacrifice my love for the alliance.
I doubt that.
But it depends. It depends on how Natalie approaches him, because if Natalie approaches him, with the kind of thing where she really wins over his heart and forms a kind of gets a stranglehold over his decisions and makes it seem like no, you got to be loyal to me. This is where your loyalty lies with me. This is where your heart truly is. Then he'd be like, I'm sorry, Alliance, but my true loyalty is to my love.
Yeah, it's an interesting storyline here of what's going to happen with the Natalie and James thing, because it is an unforeseen development, at least from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, it definitely, I think. I mean, McCrae and Amanda was pretty surprising, but this might top it.
This might, yeah. All right, and then we got a very long segment about Corey's love of Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas Corey.
Really?
You were talking about this is a sleepy Sunday night. I was like, what are you talking about? Christmas Corey and all these James segments? This is the most exciting episode ever. I can't believe that you're not into Christmas Corey.
Yeah, boy, we found out that Corey really does love making the Yuletide happy and bright.
Yeah, and he dropped $600 on Christmas last year, decking his house out. He was the best one on the block. Corey's into this.
It's very into it. So very interesting
It's the
stuff.
happiest time of the year, Rob.
Very happy time for Corey. All right, Taran, I want to jump into taking some questions about the episode. Anything else from tonight's episode that you want to discuss?
I did know. I tweeted out. I'm pretty sure we haven't gone an episode without a James prank so far. So let's keep an eye on that. We'll keep a tally. Will there be an episode without a James prank?
I did enjoy the James prank tonight only for the Natalie reaction to it, which
Yeah.
was pretty priceless. That you could see from the infrared camera where she could not keep it together as it was happening. So that was I thought was pretty funny that she was
Yeah.
in on it.
My favorite James pranks are the ones that are just they're very quick and they involve like an actual good reaction as opposed to like the weird ones where he's just talking to someone in a shower.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some of these questions from you guys. Hashtag RHAP or go to robswebsite.com/YouTube and post them on our YouTube video, and then we'll get into breaking down the weekend on the live feeds. Let's start off with Anthony966, who says, is my brother Cody the new my sister is Ariana Grande?
My brother Cody.
My brother Cody. You know, I was thinking about the Cody and Paulie thing over the weekend, and I was hoping that you could maybe talk this through with me, Taran. So for me, the idea of Frankie Grande, you know, I don't like when people are entitled, and I felt like that the whole idea of Frankie Grande is that here's this guy who his sister is a big star, and it did seem as though at times that the Frankie Grande is entitled because of the accomplishments of his sibling. And to some degree, do you feel like that we have a similar situation with a different person who's connected to BB18, who seems to be riding high in life because of an attachment to a sibling?
My brother Cody.
I don't think so actually. I feel like Paulie. I think it's almost the opposite, where Paulie wants to bring honor to the Calafiore name as opposed to riding high on Cody's honor.
But I think that would imply that he thinks that there is some dishonor associated with the Calafiore name, and I don't believe that he imagines that to be the case.
I think he does. I think he recognizes that a lot of people look down on Cody's game, and I think he's gone out of his way to defend it in the house. I think that he feels like there's something to prove there.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and take another question. Let's go to Jason Rivera, who says, I'd like to put on my tinfoil hat and say that the roadkill comp is really easy for production to have whoever they want win. They really want me to believe that Victor is the best at math? I don't think so. Do you think, I mean, let's entertain this thought for a moment in terms of if Big Brother had the ability to throw a competition like that, or just to say that anybody they wanted to could win this, which I really believe that there are lawyers involved, and I don't think that this is a realistic possibility. Is this what they would want, Victor to win the roadkill this week?
I don't think so, and like I understand the skepticism because it's frustrating to not get the times, and I agree. I'd like to see the times. I'd like to see how close it came. I don't like that it's the same thing with the nomination wheel where it's just the face comes up, right? The winner sign comes up. There's no real tension behind it. That said, they're not rigging this for anyone, right? Like if they wanted to rig this, why? It's not about how easy it is. It's about what the desired result is. So if they wanted Victor to win this, all they need to do is make a competition where Victor's the clear favorite, right? Or like, why would they make it so it's such a weird contrast where Victor wins the math competition? I think
this seems like a stretch.
Yeah, like I mean, again, like I understand the skepticism, but I think that's it's a bit too far from their perspective, and I do think that there are some sort of like regulations that they have to adhere to. This being a show with a prize at the end. I don't think they'd risk this sort of thing getting out, like ruining the show, just to get Victor a roadkill win.
So are they rigging the BB roadkill?
No!
No, I don't think so. And let's go to Not Kevin wants to ask the question, between Victor, Paul, Natalie, and Bronte, who do you guys think is doing the best job of assimilating back into the house after Jose's eviction? All right, so of the 4 votes that went against Paulie, who's done the best job of getting back into the larger group?
Paul has done the best job of integrating. He's the one that people are the least worried about. He's the one that they want to bring the furthest.
See, I would have said Natalie because it seems to me from things that I've watched on the feeds, it seems like that people are pretty high on her and don't really consider her a threat.
I would, the way that you frame the question, I think Paul is the one that's going to integrate himself the best. Natalie is the one who might be set up the best to go far, but that's with her own separate thing. I don't think she's integrating very well with the main alliance, and people are concerned about her relationship with James and her closeness with Bridget and Frank and all that.
She's the Helen of Troy of Big Brother 18.
Yes.
The Yoko Ono of breaking up the 8-pack. Melissa Beth says, why can't I like these newbies? I want to like the underdogs, but they're so sadly terrible at the game. Is there anything that can save them? We did discuss the idea last week on the show of the unlikable underdogs, which is a rarity on the Big Brother. Is there anything that you can speak to in terms of these underdog rookies?
I think like I said, I think the worst of them are leaving. I think Jose was our messiah, and he was obviously great at the game, but was cut a little too short, unfortunately. And now we're seeing Victor, his right-hand man. He's going to go soon, and I think that the remaining people are mostly a little more likable, and they're learning the game on the fly, right? They're getting a little better. The girls are starting to solidify. They're starting to push this narrative of girl power. Don't let the guys get into jury. We want a girl to win, and that's definitely helping their cause. And we're seeing Paul integrate himself more. I think as we progress, even by next week, we might start to see these new players as starting to be more likable underdogs.
Yeah, the men versus women thing is becoming a storyline where, in a lot of seasons we have a lot of women going out early, but if things hold and we have Victor go out on Thursday, that's going to be 3 guys off the bat who go out, an 8-5 advantage for the women in the house, and we will see if the guys start to react negatively to the idea of targeting another guy like a Paul moving forward. So I think that's going to be a big story in these next couple of weeks on Big Brother. Johnny D. Silvera says, has there ever been a more obvious comp throw than Z and Day for HOH? Now, I didn't even think that they were throwing the competition based on what they were saying in the diary room, Taran.
Yeah, I don't think they were.
Yeah, Johnny DeSevere might be alone on an island with that, because there are definitely take a look at some of those Battle of the Blocks of the people throwing the competitions.
Yeah. Johnny Mac didn't even have to throw that Battle of the Block with Day. I don't think they wanted to win, but I don't think they were intentionally throwing it either.
Yeah, so I don't think so. Jennifer says, why didn't Bridget make a bigger fuss to be the HOH? Frank literally only asked Michelle and Paulie. Yeah, we didn't see a real debate going on over who was going to be the HOH for Category 4.
Yeah, none of them wanted it, and Paulie, they talked about it afterward. Not all of them were saying we don't want it, so Paulie was just like, all right, fine, I'll take it, which was obviously what Frank wanted. Bridget has been completely fine with staying under the radar. She doesn't want to ruffle any feathers, and I think she's another one who's starting to smart up to the game, and I think she recognizes that even if she does get this HOH, there's not a lot she can do with it if somebody from the other side wins the roadkill, because then they control the votes anyway. So I think she just wants to survive until there's an option for her without these twists getting in the way.
Okay. Then we have Fox Van Allen, who says, given how frequently she shows up in the show, what are the odds of Jody showing up to play in the next All-Star? So we did have a Jody sighting in the air freshener, which was Peachy Keen. Taran, did I miss something? Is that Jody's catchphrase or something? Why have an image of Jody on a Peachy Keen air freshener?
I feel like all this Jody stuff was just leading up to the Glenn situation. I think that we're getting reminded of Jody so that when Glenn goes out, we're like, oh well, Glenn just joins the Jody club. I don't think we're gonna see Jody again, unfortunately.
No, I don't think so. Maybe hard to imagine the scenario where we're gonna bring Jody back.
Well, I mean, you never know. Maybe we get a season of Jody and Glenn and maybe Lawan. Just like an all-star season.
Sure. Perhaps. Hank Hardwell says, were you surprised that there was no mention of Bronte's aspiration of being a mathematician in the Roadkill Challenge? I don't know. Was Bronte a mathematician the same way that Jordan Parhar is a conservative Republican?
There's been some contention over that, but I do think she actually is a mathematician, but
Yeah.
she also is, a sort of like actress slash host want to be person. So
Right.
yeah.
In that, and I'm talking about an occupation which is in a bio, but really never is mentioned on the TV show.
Yeah, potentially. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Then
she has mentioned that she has mentioned her math stuff before. As far like I'm a math person, so I know that the numbers really matter in this game. Like it requires a mathematics degree to figure that out.
Okay. Then Carrie says, why get rid of Victor when he's so desperate to work with them?
It's basically because he's on the other side. And Victor just voted against Paulie, and Paulie doesn't trust him. Paulie right after he won HOH said, "You know what? I don't really even care. As long as one of them goes, one of the people that voted for me, it's fine." But it kind of settled on Victor because he was the biggest threat of them, and Paulie just didn't think he could trust him. And again, Victor, they didn't really show this in the episode, but Victor had been sort of having some outbursts. He said to Frank, "You lied to my face." He was clearly upset about what happened, more so than the other people who were more willing to play ball.
Also, that in this truly desperate situation, I think most people are willing to play ball. It's really only a true lunatic that's like, I'm coming after you. I'm coming like, no, why vote me out? I'm with you guys. I'm with you guys the whole time. Whatever you want me to do.
Yeah,
I'm with
exactly.
you guys. Yeah. So I think that everybody says that when they're looking like straight into the barrel of an eviction. Just Joshin wants to say, isn't the way that Vic runs to Paulie and Frank reminiscent of BB18 Frank running to Dan and his alliance? What do you think about that, Taran?
Vic running to Paulie and Frank. Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
Okay, we'll go with that. Sure. Eric wants to say, could Paulie have taken control of the house by siding with the resistance and sending a returnee home? Boy, that's a big power move to be making in week 2 of a Big Brother season, no?
Yeah, that's too much. I understand because he's certainly not he's on the outs of that 8-pack alliance. He's not actually in it. However, not only does he not have the numbers to make that move, but it's way too risky. It puts him up on this pedestal of like huge target for the rest of the game, and that he'll never get down from.
It's a really terrible move to make early on. I mean, the first half of the Big Brother game is really about assessing what is the will of the majority of the house and just sort of like taking a block out of the Jenga board and not getting everybody pissed off at you for the next 10 weeks of the game. Whereas when you get into the second half of the Big Brother game, that's the point to be making big moves. But I think that a big move in week 2 is typically a bad move in the Big Brother house, right, Taran?
Absolutely. This is the time of the game where you're establishing credit with the other house guests. You want your HOH to be as straightforward as possible because you want to have them look at you as a straightforward player that sticks to their word and keeps everything nice and calm. So if you make a huge move this early and defy people's expectations, that's going to stick with you for the rest of the game, and it's not a good thing.
Okay. This is from Ashley Bedazzle, who says, should Big Brother have people sit out of the HOH competitions to make the teams even like on Survivor? Do you think that they should do something like that where a person should sit out where, let's say, that the big sister has lost Jose? Should the other teams all have to sit somebody out?
No, I mean, we'd have 3 people sitting out, or 2 or 3 people sitting out at least every single competition. And this is an HOH competition; it's supposed to be somewhat individual. You want them to have some sort of say in how they do, even if they don't really, because somebody can just throw it for them. Not into that idea.
Is there any talk in the house where hypothetically, like let's say if Paul goes out, where Davon and Z might have to just like be running competitions for themselves?
I don't know. It's weird because we don't know how these competitions are going to work in the future. Like, how are they going to stay team oriented the whole time? Like,
no. I think it ends with the battle back.
Yeah, I mean that's still at least a couple more competitions. So it's interesting because it's definitely it'll be weird. Like if one team gets down to one person, or what if an entire team gets decimated and then it's just 3 teams of like you know what I mean? Like
That's fine. I mean, it's. I don't think it's quite like where we had with the coaches, where if Danielle would have went home, then Dan would have also had to leave the game. So it's not like any sort of like weird, circumstances like that.
Yeah, it's just they seem so arbitrary. It's just it's weird to talk about.
It's weird. It's weird. One more question on the Talk Live feeds. Okay, this is from M, who says, "Can Bronte wiggle her way into the 8-pack?" What do you think of the chances of? And maybe that we should probably save that for the live feeds. What do you think?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, all right. So that's our segment on Sunday night's episode. So we're gonna dive into the live feeds. If you are bouncing out here, we've got, of course, coverage coming up this Wednesday and Thursday. In addition, you guys got the happy hour going on this week as well. I know you guys normally do it on Monday, but it's the 4th of July tomorrow.
We're still doing it. 4th of July
right,
podcast.
Fireworks on the happy hour. And speaking of Jordan Parhar will be sitting in for me this Wednesday and Thursday as I am en route to Chicago. I am speaking at the Podcast Movement Conference during the week this week, so Jordan Parhar will be filling in for me, but we will still have live coverage here on RHAP this Wednesday night and Thursday night. That will be in the main podcast feed. Jordan's Happy Hour will still be in his regular reality TV Happy Hour feed. And also excited to announce that we will have a guest this Thursday. Ian Terry will be back on the podcast this Thursday, and some intrigue where Jordan Parhar and Ian Terry discuss important items in the Big Brother house, like potentially who will be the suitor who will emerge for BB Michelle.
This is our version of the battle back, right? It's the big tournament. Jordan versus Ian. Who gets Michelle's heart?
Right. And then I will be back with you guys live 1 week from tonight on our Big Brother coverage after we get back from the RHAPCon next week. But until then, let's get into talking about our spoilers here. Here we go.
The Office of Civil Defense has issued the following message. This is
a spoiler.
Warning.
A spoiler.
Warning means that an actual
spoiler
against this country has been detected and that protective action should be taken.
Okay, there you go. All right. Ready to talk about the weekend in spoilers here, Taran. And, of course, we get things started with Tiffany reacting to being the Roadblock nominee and really took it in stride.
Oh, yeah. Totally calm, collected. Great. You know, the opposite of what you'd expect as from Vanessa's sister. Unfortunately, I'm kidding. Basically, what happened is Victor told Frank that he was going to nominate Tiffany. Tiffany asked Frank, "Who's he going to nominate?" And Frank said, "I don't know." Mm-hmm. And then she asked Pauly, and in this time, Frank had told Pauly that Victor was going to nominate Tiffany. And so Pauly told Tiffany, "Oh, Victor told Frank that he's going to nominate you." And so the fact that she was going to be nominated and Frank had just lied to her about it just totally set her off. Typical reaction that you'd expect from a Russo.
This is typical you, Vanessa.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, she basically, you know, went around. Why did Frank lie to me? It mostly went toward Pauly, which was mostly a good thing because some other people would have taken it a lot worse than Pauly did.
When you say it mostly went towards Pauly, that what Frank being mad or Tiffany being or her she was venting to Pauly.
Tiffany's venting was mostly with Pauly and Michelle, her two closest people at the moment. And she did talk to people like Day, and they were like, yeah, this is what we expect from Tiffany. You know, she's Vanessa's sister, and it didn't do her a lot of favors. Pauly, unfortunately, has started to come off the Tiffany train. He's talking about how he doesn't trust her as much because of this sort of freak out. He doesn't want her to blow up his spot, and he's afraid that she's a little too volatile. He's still working with her. He's still defending her, but he's not quite there as he used to be.
Yeah, and this was a good point that Alex had brought up during our live feed update that we did on Friday, where he talked about how the 8-pack has some cracks in it, and while the Jose resistance is probably dead, now there's a little bit of trying to pick up the pieces of trying to figure out where things are going to shape up next after this 8-pack sort of cracks under its own weight. And while the roadkill nomination of Tiffany really isn't going to probably change things for Victor this week, I think that this is a big crack in that of where does the fallout for Tiffany ultimately end up going.
Yeah, it was definitely not a good thing for Tiffany. It has she was already sort of on the outs in this alliance because of her behavior beforehand. She acted this way when last week when Nicole told her that she was a possible target of Victor, and that was sort of the start of this she's a little too much like her sister thing, and that has continued, and Devon in particular has talked about targeting her, and then she's had a couple of tiffs with Frank now, and so Frank is very, very much so talking about targeting her as soon as possible, really. He's talking about targeting her as soon as next week. So this has definitely not helped Tiffany's case.
Okay, let's put a pin in that, and let's just bring the veto into all this. Now, for Victor, he really needed a win in the veto. He doesn't get to play it, and Paulie ends up winning the veto this weekend. What did Paulie do to win the veto?
It was the spelling competition, the typical spelling competition that we usually get in week 2.
Okay.
Or 1.
And Paulie had a pretty impressive word, no?
Yeah, it was. I'm blanking now. It was like sustainability or something.
Something pretty good. So tip of the Rutgers cap to Paulie there on spelling that out and winning the veto. So he has all the power. He has the HOH. He has the veto, and so the back door is in place. And so who is coming down?
He's going to take Paul off the block and.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, replace him with Victor. He can't take Tiffany off because then Victor would replace Tiffany, and he doesn't have as good a relationship with Bronte. So he's using this opportunity again to sort of solidify this working relationship that he's created with Paul.
Is there any talk in the house of why is he taking Paul off the block and not Bronte?
No, Bronte has always been the secondary target to Victor. So this is par for the course for them.
Okay, so then Victor versus Bronte versus Tiffany looks like it's going to be the case. I mean, do you think that things have become unsettled in any way where potentially there could be some sort of a movement to go after Tiffany and not Victor?
I think there's a chance that Frank is trying to get that moving, but he's talking about next week. He hasn't even mentioned this week yet, and a lot of people are reluctant even to say next week. They're saying maybe the week after next week. So it's looking very unlikely.
Okay, now we've talked about the Fatal 5 so far this season being a thing. That there is also the idea of Tiffany trying to talk to the Spy Girls and get this all-girls thing happening. What have you seen of Tiffany trying to reach out to some of the other women in the house?
Yeah, this is definitely Tiffany's saving grace if she has one. This is sort of her out because she's in a bad situation with this 8-pack, but she's building a relationship with Bronte and Natalie and Bridget, and really they were already girl power, and she's reinforcing that. You guys are girls, I'm a girls girl, like we're all girls, and we love girls, and so she's trying to connect them with Devon and Zakiya and Michelle and Nicole, and just get pretty much every single girl on board on the same page to run the guys out of the house. And Devon's group, they're kind of welcoming to this idea. They're kind of okay with this, even though Devon still wants to target Tiffany a lot.
But Taran, don't you think this is a bit of a dangerous game for Tiffany to be playing in a situation where she herself is up on the block? Because if Frank is already talking about potentially targeting Tiffany, and then Frank and Paulie do the math and realize, hey, if we send Victor out of the house, that there is going to be an 8-5 numerical advantage for the women to the guys in the house. And, okay, eventually they're going to start coming for us. Don't we need to keep some of the guys in the house, and shouldn't we take this shot against Tiffany?
It's unlikely. I think that not only do they not have the numbers to pull that off unless they pull in a girl, I think that I don't think that it can go that far at the moment. I think that Devon in particular really has Frank trusting her, and Frank is not worried about a girls thing right now. He's worried about Tiffany, and so if he finds out that Tiffany is working with these spy girls, that might concern him and maybe want Tiffany out even sooner. But Day's not going to get on board with that because Day's okay with this girl thing happening. So I think that Tiffany is pretty safe here, and I do like what she's doing because she needs something. She's kind of hanging out to dry if she doesn't have these girls.
Yeah, and it's really an interesting spot. It just feels like that I can see the writing on the wall for. Don't you feel like that? Well, Frank seems like and everybody has been like correct in talking about like how great of a game Frank has played, and he's been pretty likable this season. And I wasn't a huge Frank guy in BB18, but I think he's done a really good job this season. It just seems to me that okay. Obviously, we're going to get rid of Victor here this week, but it just feels like a likely domino is going to be, oh, eventually Frank's a big target, and he's going to be going out sooner than later, maybe even in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Devon in particular, again, she's the one. She's talked about targeting Tiffany a lot. She's also talked about targeting Frank a lot. She has specifically said, I want to get Frank out before jury. I don't want him in the jury, and I don't blame her for not wanting him in the jury because we know what Frank is like as a jury member. Devon has definitely started to catch on to Devon and Zakiya. I'll give them both the credit. They've and honestly, Bridget has caught on to it a lot too. A lot of people are catching on to what Frank's doing. Like I said in the first half of the show, he's making all the right moves by the book, right? He's making everything that he's doing is correct. He's very friendly. He's not getting into too many fights. He's keeping it pretty low key. But it's almost too perfect. People are seeing like he's in a great spot right now. He's running the house, and it's very obvious. It's not under the radar enough. He's very forthcoming when he talks about I want to protect Bridget. I want to protect these people. They're like, okay, well clearly you just have them in your back pocket then.
Yeah, Frank doesn't really seem to be subscribing to the idea of the meat shield theory in terms of keeping some of these other threatening people in the house. And it just feels like that we're going to move in a direction where there will come a point very soon where the most threatening person in the house is going to be Frank.
Oh, absolutely, and it's almost to the point where that's true right now. He is kind of the biggest target in the house, and it's just a matter of who's going to work up the courage to take a shot at him. And honestly, he's reminding me a lot of Big Brother 14 Frank right now, where he talked a lot about taking Dan out and then didn't do it, right? Like, he's talking about taking Tiffany out a lot. He's pushing it to almost anyone that will listen, and it's not time to take Tiffany out yet. He's talking about doing it next week, maybe the week after. And if she gets word of that, I mean, she's already sort of coming after him. She's going to try to organize a coalition, and people are going to be on board because they see Frank as the biggest target in the house.
Do you see a scenario where potentially Frank is maybe the fifth person to go out of the game and then has a layup where all he has to do is beat one person in the battle back to come right back into the house?
That's exactly the scenario I'm picturing for him.
Wow.
Honestly, that's exactly what I'm picturing.
Yeah. So, I mean, things seem very calm on the surface right now in Big Brother 18, but the waters underneath are choppy.
Very much so. And I think the sooner that this sort of roadkill competition goes away, the sooner the teams go away, the sooner this is going to start cracking up all over the place.
Okay. Then in terms of Tiffany and Michelle, is Michelle as tight with the women as that we've been led on in the first couple of weeks?
Pretty much so. Michelle has been doing a very decent job of staying calm, staying under the radar. Just earlier today, Frank was talking with Nicole about how he wants to take Michelle into the Final Four instead of Devon and James. And then Nicole was talking to Devon, and they were talking about how they might want to take Michelle toward the Final Four. So they see her as somebody who's just kind of there right now, and that's exactly where she should be.
Okay. James, in terms of the battle of the sexes, do you feel like he's likely to stay with the bros, even if that he has potentially the showmance with Natalie?
I think that James will go with the girls. And it might not even be Natalie. It might just be like Nicole. I think that he definitely has a bro thing with Frank. They've talked a lot, but I think that Frank is the one that comes off a little more devious in this situation, and I think that James is going to be the person that says, no, the girls are the righteous ones. I'm going to follow them and be loyal.
Besides Paulie, who's Frank's tightest ally in the house? James?
I'm not sure if I think it might be Corey. I mean, he's somewhat close to Corey. He's very close to Day, but Day wants him out. So yeah, there's really not a number 2 that you can really point to.
And where has Nicole's head been at in the couple days coming out of being the first HOH?
Nicole's doing great. Like I said, she's within the 8-pack. She's in with the Frank side. She's in with the Day side, and nobody's questioning her at the moment. She also has Corey in her back pocket, which nobody's too threatened by. She has a final 2 with Frank, but I don't think either of them really like. They're both like smirking as they talk about it, like this is clearly not true. And she also has a final 2 with Devon and so on and so forth. One with Corey. She's in a great spot. I don't see her going anywhere right now. She's not making too many moves, but that's because she doesn't have to. She's positioned well enough that she doesn't have to be doing all the stuff that Frank is doing. She just can sit back and wait.
Last thing before we get back into some questions, looking ahead to the vote on Thursday, what we're going to have 10 votes, 10 people voting this week?
Yes.
Okay. Is it 10-0 for Victor? Do you think that there are any people who are thinking about voting for somebody besides Victor?
We might see like Paul give him a pity vote or something.
I think that'd be a mistake for Paul.
Probably, but you never know.
Okay. All right. Let's jump back into questions now, bringing into the live feeds, into everything. Ryan Wilson says, did you see on the feeds when Michelle asked Day in front of the 8-pack if she was on the Rob Cesternino podcast? Now, Taran, I actually did happen to be watching the feeds, which is, sort of like a disconcerting thing when you're in the middle of watching it and then you hear your name. It's sort of like kind of freaks you out a little bit, where it's like, am I having some sort of psychotic episode? But I did happen to be watching at that point in time. And Devon said no, she had no recollection of doing that sort of thing. We did do an exit interview last summer for the fact checkers out there.
Yeah, she's sharp enough to notice that there's twins in the house, but not sharp enough to remember you, unfortunately.
Yeah, no. I would have loved to have gotten Devon back on the podcast last summer, but did not. Weren't able to do that. But Michelle, it seems like that Michelle, she is asking about the podcast, but it doesn't seem like anybody else in the house has any sort of awareness. So don't expect any RHAP conversations this summer.
Yeah, this is no Big Brother Canada 3.
No,
that's
for sure. So, but I would have been nice to know what Michelle's follow-up question was going to be to ask Devon. If Devon had said yes, if Michelle was going to say, "Oh, I hate that podcast."
Yeah. Did
everybody
you say
pause? Yeah. I hate everybody involved with that, except for Jordan Barhart. Ian Terry on Thursdays. Okay. Can Skate fan says, is it better for Devon and Zakiya to cut Tiffany next soon or try to get Frank out? I have to think that for Devon and Zakiya, it would be good to keep Tiffany around, right?
It is tricky because if they go after Frank, then they do leave themselves a little bit vulnerable to Tiffany picking up all 3 of those spy girls and then sort of being in a minority of a girl alliance because she also has Michelle. So, but if they take out Tiffany, they're doing Frank's work, and then Frank kind of has a majority over them. They're a little bit vulnerable to Frank. So it's actually a tricky position, and I think their best option is just wait for one of those 2 to win power and let them take each other out.
Yeah, I think that it would be very silly for them to take out Tiffany.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need Tiffany out at some point. I think that ideally Frank goes out first.
Okay. All right.
But they shouldn't be doing any of this. They should not be actively targeting their own people yet.
All right. This is from BB18. says, what do you think about the players that are getting much less airtime on the show, like Zakiya, Michelle, and Bridget? All right, you want to give us a quick report on Z, Michelle, and Bridget?
I mean, basically, they're all doing well enough that they're not really in any line of fire. They're not super, crazy in the house. So Zakiya is probably doing the best of those three. A lot of people talk about wanting to bring her far, even if they're not in her tight circle. She's very, very quiet, very calm. She talks a lot with Day, but not a lot of strategy with too many other people. I see her going pretty far. Michelle pretty much doing the exact same thing as Zakiya, just sort of on the other side of things. And then Bridget, who is a little less in the strategic know, but is definitely starting to wake up. She's seeing that Frank is running the house. She's starting to really jump on board this girls thing.
Woke.
So, yeah, definitely in some sense.
Is there anything to the idea that Tiffany doesn't trust Michelle?
I mean, Tiffany doesn't really trust many people. It's not really in her nature. I don't think that she's looking to target Michelle anytime soon, but she has expressed that she's a little bit concerned about Michelle.
And I asked that. I had read the report, the Saturday report on Big Brother Network, which always does a really great job of covering, the feeds for the day, about that in Tiffany's conversation with the Spy Girl, saying that she doesn't know if she can trust Michelle because Michelle seems like that maybe she's not all for the girl power, that maybe she could be the girl who sells out the girls to the guys because she's made fan pages and all the fan pages she makes are for guys.
Yes, I remember that. That's what I was referring to when she was like, "You guys are girls. Michelle is a guy's girl," because she's made fan pages for like Johnny Mac and Steve, and they're all guys. She's not a fan of the girls, so that makes me not trust her as much. Part of me wonders, is that her playing up to what they want to hear, like you can trust me over Michelle? But it's definitely an interesting way of framing that argument that we've never seen before.
Yeah, I wonder if hearing that, I made fan pages for the people who were going against my sister and didn't make a fan page for my sister who happened to be in the house, that really annoys her.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. It probably does.
Yeah, because Vanessa didn't vote for Steve. Why are you making a fan page for Steve?
Yes,
maybe that's why sister. Michelle doesn't like me when I called Steve a loser last summer.
Yeah, probably. I think we cracked the code, Rob.
And I said Steve and Johnny Mac were both losers last summer. Michelle was like, I hate that guy.
Really I have their fan pages.
Yeah.
You can't be insulting them. That's like insulting me.
Oh, Tyson Apostle. I don't think it's a real one. It says, Davon has thrown so much shade and planted so many seeds about pretty much all of her alliance mates. This strategy can't last, can it?
Well, first of all, I really want to picture Tyson asking this question.
Yes,
no, it can't last very long. Luckily, I think she has been improving. Typically, what she had been doing last week is talking to everybody about how she wants to target everybody. But she's sort of limiting that to Zakiya now. She's putting a lot of information into Zakiya. Now, if Zakiya decides to turn her back on Davon, she has a ton of info that she can use to target her. But Davon has definitely reined it in. She's starting to play to what other people are telling her, and she's getting a lot of information. She's getting information from Tiffany about Tiffany's boot order. She's getting information from Frank about Frank's boot order, and she's figuring out who their closest allies are based on that. And they're both giving this information freely because they're all talking about their exact boot order from now until Final Four, which is just absurd.
Mm-hmm. Boy, I can't believe Tyson's holding out on me. He has all this Big Brother insight to talk about, and he hasn't been sharing it with me.
This is my dream, Rob, to talk Big Brother with Tyson Apostle.
Okay. All right. Let's do a couple more. Ruth Jean says, why did the guys make such a fuss over not telling Tiffany that she was being nommed? If they told her, they could have earned her trust.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's this perception that is partly based on Tiffany's behavior and partly based on her reputation as Vanessa's sister, that if she learns bad, information that is upsetting, she's going to freak out. And unfortunately, she reinforces that by freaking out a little when she hears bad information. So there's this sense that like they don't want to disturb the hornet's nest, so to speak, and have her blow up their spot because she's concerned about something or she's freaking out about something. So they're very worried about upsetting her.
Okay. All right. And Ram01099, live feed question. Can you guys talk about the Michelle breakdown from earlier today? Something about saying something and she won't be able to get a job. Yeah, I did read this as well, that Michelle was crying again this afternoon. Any report on that?
Yeah, I knew I was going to ask about this because I'm not entirely sure what was said. I'm not sure if it was on the feeds. It may have been about living in your mom's basement and how that's a bad thing. Because what I think happened is she was talking about living in your mom's basement like it's ridiculous and shameful, and then James said, "Yeah, oh, it's not that bad. Like, shout out to Jason Roy who lives in his mom's basement," and like that, like. It shouldn't be a bad thing. And then she freaked out because she was like, oh my god, that was so terrible of me to say. That seemed like it was perhaps what she was talking about, but it might have been something worse.
Okay. Hopefully the chat room maybe can give us a little bit of insight into exactly what's going on. Again, it's always hard to pick things up when you just get the secondhand information. A couple more. Wyatt Moyer says, does anyone else feel like that Paul is actually playing a pretty good game? I think he handled everything better than anyone else would have in this situation. We talked about that at the top of the show. Taran, do you have more information on this?
Not really. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think we've talked about it.
Okay. Then in terms of Paul, anything else you want to add to how Paul has handled this situation that he's in?
I mean, yeah. Again, like he's doing pretty much exactly what he should be doing. He's keeping his people sort of on his side. They haven't like turned on Paul entirely, and then he's also integrating himself with this majority alliance, and a lot of people in their boot orders have mentioned Paul as one of the last people that they're going to take out from the other side, if not somebody that they're not going to take out at all.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul, if he can just sort of like stay out of the fray for a couple of weeks, if he can just end up going back into the fold and not be seen as an instigator, I think he'll be okay for a little bit. But that is, of course, hard to do when you are the charismatic wild card.
Yeah, he is the charismatic wild card, Rob.
It's a new archetype. Get Angie Kantz on the phone. Okay. Last one, Dave22XX. Is there anything that Victor could have done with the roadkill specifically? Well, we talked about the idea of him nominating himself. Are there any other nominees that you think might have been able to maybe? I mean, the Tiffany one did not turn out to be half bad because it's a long way to go till Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think anybody that would have tried to win the veto and use it on themselves or putting himself up, that's what you have to go for if you're worried about a backdoor. Unfortunately, he didn't really do that.
Okay.
And I am getting information from the chat. I guess Michelle called James a derogatory term about his height, and she was concerned about that, and that's why she was freaking out.
I mean, I think that Michelle is just a little too, like, she knows too much in terms of like how the live feeds work, and I think that just like the fact that she was like, where a week ago she was like, get Bridget fired from her job, where I think that she's like a little too much like on the bleeding edge of like that she feels like that the live feed watchers are like just like ready to attack at all points, and maybe gets a little too worked up about these things.
Yeah, well, from all accounts, she's one of these people.
Yeah, she's like, well, there's people like me out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So that's the BB18 live feeds for the weekend. Anything else that you have your live feed watching eyes, your BB viewers set to follow over these next couple days?
You know what? Paulie has done a really good job this week, and it's pretty under the radar. He's being very solid as HOH, and he's getting a lot of people to start to trust him. He was a big target of Days last week, and he's sort of falling off of that radar. Even though Day kind of switches her radar up all the time, we're seeing Paulie really start to integrate himself. Frank is even talking about replacing Tiffany with Paulie in the 8-pack. I think this is what I wanted to see from Paulie last week, and he's starting to do it this week, and I'm starting to get optimistic about his chances moving forward.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. That I had said on Thursday night that I thought that maybe we were going to see Paulie get the HOH-itis. That is not the Caliafiore way. That they are consensus builders. They do go to, they sort of like, if anything, they sort of, what do you guys want me to do? Just like going back to the fatal flaw of Cody, where like, hey Derek, what do you think I should do here with this final HOH of the season? I think that they ultimately, if anything, their fatal flaw in the game is not doing what is in their own best interest, but doing folding to the will of the house.
Yes, and that is a very good thing to be doing in the first half of the game.
Good thing early, bad thing late. Okay. All right, so Taran, what's the hashtag tonight?
What was it? Hashtag charismatic wildcard?
CWC for the charismatic wildcard, which is always a fun archetype to watch on the Big Brother. Okay, so here's what's going on the rest of the week. We mentioned Wednesday night, Jordan Parhar is going to be live. He's probably going to be a couple minutes late on the Wednesday. We might make the start time like 9:30 on Wednesday night because Jordan works up until very close to the start time of Big Brother on Wednesday night. So we'll look for Jordan on Wednesday with Alex, and then of course right here again 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time, Jordan is going to be live with Brent covering the live feeds, and Ian Terry will be the guest here for the first time on Big Brother 18. And then a lot more to do as well. News AF is going to be in its regular slot coming up on live on Tuesday, and then we'll get the podcast out with Tyson and Danny, and then record a fun podcast with Colin Stone, Survivor podcaster from the Dom and Colin podcast. Join me to talk about the anatomy of the Survivor merge.
Ooh, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, very technical stuff. Really doing a deep dive into the first vote after the merge. Always exciting in a Survivor season. And then if you're going to be in the Chicago area, the RHAP Con is coming. Got about 20 tickets or so left at RHAPCon.com. Should be very fun. We have a Big Brother panel to kick things off this Saturday. Andy Herron, Audrey Middleton will be there to talk about things in person. We'll have a live Big Brother live feed update as well. So going to be very fun. Taran Armstrong will be there.
Yeah, you get to, these other people like Andy, they'll be there, but you want to come to see me, so please come to Chicago, say hi. I am a little bit too big for some of you little people, but for the cool ones. No, I really, it's great to see everybody at these live shows, and if you're on the fence about this, like, should I go, should I not go, you should absolutely go. It's amazing to hang out with all these people who have similar interests. They're all super friendly. It's such an amazing experience. So, and you get to see these awesome people like Andy. So yeah, absolutely, everyone should come.
Plus, we'll be doing some bar functions on Friday night and Saturday night. No ticket needed to come out and see us at the bar function, so you could bring your friends if you have any. God knows I don't. That's going to be this Friday night and Saturday night and Saturday afternoon at DePaul University this weekend. So looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say in the comments on robhasawebsite.com. Follow Taran on Twitter. He is at Armstrong Taran. That last name first. I need to write that on like Bart Simpson on a chalkboard 500 times a day to make sure I get that straight. I'm at Rob Cesternino. Scott St. Pierre did a great job with pulling your questions as well. So looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about the episode, and all the best. Take care, everybody. Have a great 4th of July weekend, and keep safe. No fireworks. All right, stay safe, everybody. Bye.